and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pretty much build-up showtime with Liverpool in European Cup action. This Tuesday night we are defending our Champions League crown, kicking things off in the knockout stages away from home with the first leg of this round of 16 tie against Atletico Madrid. Of course, all the players and fans will have fantastic memories of this stadium last season. Unfortunately, we're not going to be taking as many this time, but I'm sure those who are going will be massively looking forward to the trip. And I do wonder whether it gives the players a little bit of a psychological boost. They obviously have some fantastic memories from being inside that stadium, being inside the dressing room and stuff like that, and hopefully they can take that into this game. That'll help their mood going into it. I think the way we've viewed this as fans is a little bit interesting because in a way this match has crept up on us a little bit. The focus has been so much on the league, and not so much as it was in the past with the league about just, you know, trying to win every single game, and more about the idea that we are getting so close to winning it that everyone's just obsessed now with not just the idea of winning the league, but when we're going to do it and just how close we are to actually getting it done. That we've almost forgotten that the European Cup was even a thing, and in a way it's not that it's not the priority, but it's certainly not been at the forefront of fans' minds for the last few weeks. And that also tends to happen in the break between the group stages and the knockout stages, and I think it probably helped us a little bit last season. I think up until the semi-final against Barca, we were thinking about the league much more than the Champions League, and as much as this is a competition where we know Liverpool are kind of almost set up to win it in a way, the way that we play really suits these knockout matches against big opposition. But we've just forgotten about it, and the same kind of thing has happened here. Of course the players haven't, and it will have always been at the back of their minds. As much as they do talk about how it's a game at a time, they will have been looking forward to this one, and we were still looking forward to it, but it feels like the pressure's off a little bit, especially with the league pretty much wrapped up now. It almost feels like if they weren't to win the Champions League, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Last season, the pressure got massively ramped up towards the end of the season because it gradually became clear that the league was potentially going to be just ever so slightly out of our reach, and the Champions League was something that we could rely upon, something that we could look forward to essentially, and think, well, at least that takes us away from the stress of the league. Now it's an added bonus essentially. It's something that we could put on top, and we are now getting into that stage where I think Liverpool need to not be looking at these competitions in isolation, but instead looking at them as we want to try and win the treble here. Not thinking, okay, Premier League's the priority, then of course we want to win the Champions League, and the FA Cup would be great as well. We need to look at all three competitions and think, okay, what's the plan going forward to make sure that we are lifting all three trophies at the end of the season? And I think that will come into the thinking of how we set up for this game, and certainly how we set up going forward into games like the FA Cup tie against Chelsea and stuff like that. So in terms of the opposition, I think it's fair to say none of us really wanted Atletico. I think one of the reasons that Liverpool do suit these massive European ties is because teams almost have to come out and play against us, because we've seen teams sit off against us, even the big teams sit off and try and soak up pressure in the past. Bayern Munich did it in the round of 16 last season. Didn't really work out for them because they ended up coming away with the 0-0 that they thought might be useful, and then of course Liverpool get the away goal at the Allianz and their entire plan completely falls apart on the spot thanks to Sadio Mane. So I don't think necessarily sitting deep is the solution against Liverpool, but often when teams do come out and play, our pressing game has worked so effectively in terms of then turning them around, hitting them on the counter, and of course with players like Mane, Salah and Roberto Firmino, they are born to play that kind of football, and they destroy teams to devastating effect in these Champions League games when they are absolutely on it. And of course the issue with Atletico Madrid is they don't play like that. They don't come out at you, especially in these Champions League games. You know, they've been to finals before, and they have got that far in the competition off the back of playing a certain way that I think all of us are very aware of. Diego Simeone has very much built a side in his image, built a side that perfectly implements the plan he wants to put in, and it essentially becomes about whether or not you've got a way around that plan. You can't rely on Atletico playing poorly. You can't rely upon them, you know, being tactically not well set up. You know that's how they're going to set up. You know they're going to execute it almost to perfection, and it's about whether or not Jurgen Klopp and his coaching staff can find a way around that. I back them to do it, but I think it is going to be very tough. But that is, of course, how the European Cup should be. It wouldn't feel so special. It wouldn't feel so brilliant to win it if it wasn't virtually impossible to get to that stage in the first place. So team news going into this game. Liverpool have a relatively clean bill of health in terms of injuries. The only absentees are the continuing long ones like Xherdan Shaqiri, Pau Glatzel and Nathaniel Klein. I think it's a little bit interesting to look at the players who came on against Norwich. Of course, Sadio Mane started the game on the bench, as did Fabinho. I think they were two players who I thought were going to start the game, especially coming off the back of the winter break. I think it'll be interesting given that both of them came on. I think Jurgen Klopp hinted that he maybe would have preferred to at least have kept one of them on the bench for that game. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that. So I think that maybe comes into his thinking for this match. It's possible that only one of them was either going to start this game and the other one would have come off of the bench against Norwich, or there's a situation where one of them is a little bit further along in terms of fitness and would have been available. Obviously, we're not privy to the training sessions. We're not privy to the medical records. It's hard to really say just how fit the players are, but I think it's fair to say that both of them will certainly be in contention to start this game. So as for how I think Liverpool are actually going to line up with the starting 11, of course it's going to be Alisson Becker in goal. No arguments, no surprises there. In front of him, I think, again, we're going to stick with what is working so well at the moment, and that is Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez as the centre-half pairing. Either side of them, I don't think there's any reason for concern over who's going to be starting here. Again, I think it's going to be the usual suspects, Trent and Alexander Robertson, Andrew Robertson even. I think when you get into the midfield, it is a little bit interesting, and personally, I don't think Fabinho's going to start. I think given that Jurgen Klopp didn't start Fabinho in the game against Norwich, and he's been, I want to say, slightly iffy in his performances off the bench, but a player like that, a defensive midfielder whose main job is to kind of not be seen, to basically create non-events in that area of the pitch, to shut down anything from actually happening, it's difficult to judge him off of those shorter performances, the substitute appearances and stuff like that. You only really get to see the value of him in those moments when we're under huge amounts of pressure, which we managed to avoid generally against Norwich. He's the kind of player who you have to watch for 90 minutes to really appreciate what he's doing and just how well he's doing it. I think given that his only real 90-minute performance was the game against Shrewsbury, and I know that was before the winter break, and there's issues with how his fitness will have improved immeasurably since then, I'm sure. But given how well the midfield performed without him against Norwich as well, I think it would be harsh to drop anyone out the side. One thing that Jurgen Klopp has done really well is when players have come in, whether it's because they're playing well or whether it's because injury has necessitated their arrival in the starting 11, either way, if they come in and they play well and they don't do anything wrong, he always keeps them in the side, and that is so important in terms of squad morale. Players know that, you know, it's going to be difficult to get their chance because once the player's in, it's difficult to then get back out unless there is an injury or something like that. But likewise, once you're out, it's difficult to get back in, and that should be no different for Fabinho, as good as he has been in the past. And I'm sure further down the line, he will come back in for the sake of rotation. I'm sure he'll do brilliantly, and I'm sure he will cement his place back in the starting 11. But I think for now, the players who have been playing in midfield have been doing a very good job indeed, and it would be unfair to take any of them out the side after the game against Norwich. So I think we stick with what we had there. I think we go with Henderson as the number 6. He's been a revelation in that role since Fabinho got injured. Gini Wijnaldum just does his job week in, week out, and also came off on the hour mark against Norwich, so there should be no issues around fitness there. And then I think Naby Keita as well performed fine against Norwich, and I think it was an interesting performance because while it wasn't as maybe flashy and as eye-catching as it has been in the past for Naby Keita, I think the reason for that was he was gelling into the system a little bit better, and he was doing the things that go unnoticed, that go underappreciated, the kind of things that characterise how a Jurgen Klopp midfield works, and that's why maybe we didn't get as many plaudits as possible, but I thought he helped the overall functionality of the midfield a lot better than maybe he has done in the past, where he's made those eye-catching darting runs and brilliant through balls and passes forward and stuff like that, but maybe that has come at the detriment of having an extra body in midfield when that has been necessary. So I think he stays in the side, and also with the expectation that Atletico Madrid are going to sit back, I think it would be nice to have someone who can pick the lock a little bit in midfield. And Naby Keita tried some great things against Norwich. It didn't always come off. Sometimes the run wasn't there, sometimes the pass was too early or too late, but I think it was clear that there was an idea there of what he could offer the side. And I think in this game, you know, under the lights on a Champions League night, if he's got what it takes to play for Liverpool, and I think there's still a bit of a jury out there, not because I don't rate him, I think he's a fantastic footballer, but simply because he hasn't really had enough opportunities because of injury and because of how strong the side is without him and stuff like that. But I think in this kind of situation, if he's got what it takes to be a real Liverpool player and a real asset for the club going forward in the big matches, then he's got to deliver. He kind of did it in the Club World Cup with that opening goal against Monterrey. Here's hoping he can do it again against what is going to be a very stubborn Atletico Madrid defence. And then speaking of how we break out their defence, I think it's going to be the usual suspects for the front three. I don't think there's any reason to argue who's going to be playing there. It will be Firmino straight down the middle, Mo Salah down the right-hand side, and Sadio Mane coming in off the left. So taking a little look at Atletico then. In terms of injury news, they've had a couple of boosts this week. Diego Costa has, of course, been out for them since November, and we were kind of informed of that news as soon as Liverpool drew Atletico Madrid. Of course, we know exactly what Diego Costa is about. We've seen more than enough of him in the Premier League, and I think it'll be fascinating to see how he gets on against Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk is just, you know, every forward's worst nightmare and is almost impossible to deal with, and everything that's been thrown at him so far, he has dealt with absolutely fantastically. But Diego Costa is a totally different beast. He is like no forward anyone has faced on the planet. I'm pretty sure Van Dijk will have had to play against Diego Costa during his 2 years at Southampton. They will have overlapped there, so he'll know what the player's about, and it won't be a complete shock coming up against him. But I think Van Dijk has gone up several levels even since he left Southampton and arrived at Liverpool, and of course it will be interesting to see how he copes with other players alongside him as well. Joe Gomez will help out on that front, I'm sure, and then the midfield will probably get involved as well. We may even get another legendary stare down between our captain Jordan Henderson and Diego Costa to replicate that one from a game. God, it must have been about 5 years ago or something like that. But, you know, if anyone hasn't seen it, look up Jordan Henderson, Diego Costa. You will very, very quickly find the clip because it is quite funny. But anyway, Diego Costa will be playing for Atletico, I'm sure. He's been back in training. He's been back in intense training as well. So I reckon they are, you know, doing that with the express intention of him being available for this match. Alvaro Morata has also been able to make himself available. So they've got some options there in terms of their strike partnership. Unfortunately for them, certainly not for us, João Félix will be unavailable. He's been out for a while, injured. You know, he's their record signing, something like 126 million quid they paid for him, and he has been doing all right this season. Unavailable in this game. He was injured. He came back. He's now been struck down with illness, which has rendered him unfit for the match, so he won't be playing. The same goes for ex-Tottenham Hotspur right back Kieran Trippier, which will be interesting to see how they deal with that, because he has been very, very involved for them this season, and of course, having been involved in the European Cup final last season, he will probably be out for revenge and looking to get a result against Liverpool, but unfortunately he won't be able to do it in this game at least. I've got no idea whether he's going to be back for the return leg in 3 weeks time, but of course that is very much at the back of our minds. All attention focus is turned towards this game, and in terms of our Atletico setup, I think it is fairly inevitable that they will sit deep, they will look to play on the counter, they will try and win the game. I don't think they'll play for 0-0 by any stretch of the imagination, although to be honest, given the away goal rule and being what we've seen in the past with games like our knockout tie against Bayern Munich last season, 0-0 I think is a better result nowadays for the home team than it is for the away side. So I think there's two very, very important things for Liverpool here. One is don't let Atletico score first, because they will just park the bus to the most ridiculous level, and I think even our brilliant attackers won't be able to find a way past that, because if they go 1-0 up, even the forwards, the ones that are left up for the counter attack, will be getting involved with the defensive effort as well, and it'll be almost impossible to break them down. And also the other important thing is get a goal. Get it even one. In a way, it almost feels like a 2-1 loss is better than a 0-0, because it puts you in a more favourable position at home. It puts you in a position at home where you can concede one goal and not immediately start worrying about the away goals rule and focus on your game instead. So I think Saul Niguez has also been doing interviews before the game, and he said that he thinks the best way to stop Liverpool is to sit back and defend. He says he's been watching us an awful lot. He watched the game against Norwich and said he reckons if Mane doesn't score that goal, Liverpool don't go on to win the game, which is a fair assessment. But as he also points out, that's not luck that Liverpool get that goal. That's not good fortune that they managed to force that goal and win the game. It is just sheer persistence, hard work, sacrifice, and brilliance as well at the end of the day. So Atletico know about what we're about just as much as we know what they're about. I think it's fairly inevitable how this game is going to set up. It's very, very difficult to call how it's actually going to end up, though, because I think it will be decided on very individual moments. I think there's definitely going to be one goal in it. I can't see us going and doing what we did to Porto or any team like that. I don't think it's going to be a demolition job. If you ask me, I'd bite your hand off for a 1-0 or a 2-1 or anything like that, or even a score draw. I would take that with open arms back to Anfield, because at the end of the day, you would back this team to do absolutely anything and turn over any deficit at Anfield, regardless of who the opposition is. So I think it's tight. I think Liverpool will win. I think we'll win, but I think it's 50-50 whether or not we win or draw. Again, I'll never entertain the possibility of us losing, because I am and always will be the optimist, but I think it will be a very, very exciting, very, very interesting, and very, very stressful game to be a Liverpool fan. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days. Don't forget to follow at ATLLIV Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll be back tomorrow evening after we've hopefully got some result against Atletico. Until then, bye for now.